I'm responding to this lady a second time only because I realized I've been a hypocrite. What I did was 2 videos ago, I pointed out that fat acceptance activists like to provoke, they like to be obnoxious often. Not all of them. Sometimes they don't want to be obnoxious and they will start immediately in a very condescending way a lot of their videos. And that I think this is a strategy. Now, I also said I think we should not rise to the bait because it's helping to fuel their coping mechanism, and it's helping them to reinforce the belief that they are spreading, which is a E followed by the letter D belief, that it's like much worse to be overweight than any other physical trait, that you must fear it, that or you must see it as like a badge of honor to be fat shamed and things like this. It's all this E followed by the letter D, the bin GE variety, um, that it's part of this belief system that is built up around it, as it is a mental problem, right? And it's a coping mechanism. It's quite complex, and I was pointing out that we shouldn't feed into it, that we should try to respond, point out when they are being condescending, but don't get like openly triggered by it, because they can use that to fuel the belief system, and they will fuel their own behaviors a lot of the time if they feel like, look, I'm being attacked, and then they go and they do the behaviors. And then I went in the very next video and I got very openly, very clearly triggered by this lady here, when she did it, when she was being very condescending in the opening seconds. I did point out that she was, I guess you could say, rage baiting. I think it's more snark baiting and criticism baiting more generally than pure, not really rage, but certainly snark baiting. And I did point out the bait, and then I rose to it. I sort of pointed out the bait and pointed out myself rising to it. I'm going to try now to respond to this other video that she did in a completely, unemotional way. Let's see how I do. Okay.
All of that makes me a villain.
Okay, so this is what she's replying to. This is the stitch she's replying to. It is this quick. That's why I paused immediately, because the next second it's the stitch is over. So let's read what this says that she's replying to. Replying with skip a meal when someone says eat a burger. And it's for anyone who is unable to see the screen for any reason. She's a lady who is holding the camera way up high, which makes her, which by the way, if you don't know, that makes you look a lot thinner if you've never done it before, if you've never experimented with camera angles. And she is obviously, I would say she's a healthy weight, which is relevant to what the rest of this video. I would say she looks very much like, she doesn't look like she's got too much jiggle. She doesn't look like anything is protruding that shouldn't protrude on a healthy human. So I'm just going to say that, and given that the angle will make her look thinner than she is, I'm going to say she's most probably in the healthy weight range and body composition range. And she's so that, and the comment that the caption is saying, replying with skip a meal when someone says eat a burger. So she's basically saying that she's been, I guess, thin, underweight shamed, because thin shamed, it's very vague. What do we mean? Because thin now seems to just mean healthy weight. But let's say underweight shamed, because someone's implying that she needs to eat more, which you would think you would only do if you thought someone was underweight, even though, as I say, it doesn't look like she is. And yeah, she's basically laughing about or bragging about the response that she gives, or it's very likely she hasn't given this response, she's just thought about it. It's also possible, do want to point out that this never happened. People do make up little things like this and on TikTok all the time. It's quite possible this didn't even happen, but it is interesting as she's suggesting that people should say this, and I think that I'm not going to give my opinion on that until we watch the rest of this.
Hey, bestie. Your insecurities are 100.
Okay, so first with the hey bestie, I just have to quickly address it because I do want to add to my last point in the last video that just like with the oh let me hold your hand thing that fat acceptance has been doing, and I don't know if it's just them. Someone tell me, is it just them or is it everywhere? Because I'm only really in a few corners of the internet at any one time. I couldn't possibly dedicate my attention to like the whole general. I'm really just in fat acceptance, anti-fat acceptance, and therefore not on purpose, but I end up getting like Ghoul World content, which has some crossover, and then some people I like do that. So I'm not really into Ghoul World that much, but I'm kind of where there's crossover in the creators I follow, I will follow a little bit of that, and all of those are using this bestie, baddie, girly pop, veggies for vegetables. It's basically a diminutive suffix at the end of a word to make it sound cutesy, and that's a trend I've noticed. I don't know if it is, I say, everyone, tell me if it is just a cultural thing online or if it is just in this little sphere, but I have noticed that when fat acceptance do it, they certainly do it often in a very condescending way. They're not just being like friendly, and they're not doing it in a way that suggests they've just absorbed the language, because that happens. You absorb words and phrases a lot of the time without thinking about what they might, without the same intent that the person who came up with them had. And I think it seems very obvious to me that when they start a video like "Hey bestie" in this context where they're about to be critical, and it's very much that they are doing it on purpose to be irritating, because it's overly familiar. It's calling someone a best friend when they're not, or they sometimes, I've seen cis a lot as well. It's a trend in this whole sphere of the internet right now, calling people cis when they're just strangers, like your viewers, or calling people bestie. I'm not saying, like, I'm not criticizing anyone who does this, or if you call people girlies. I find it a little irritating, but whatever. I don't think most people are trying to be irritating. I think the one reason I find it irritating is I know that these, like, fat acceptance, they do it to be condescending when they're using this diminutive suffix, very cutesy, infantilizing language. They're infantilizing themselves and or their audience, and I feel like there's a neurolinguistic programming motive under there, even if it's unconscious. With when they're doing it in this weaponized way, this bestie thing, they're being overly familiar, so that's going to get people's backs up, and it's also like childish, and it's therefore it's making you see them as more childlike, which might make you trust them more, depending on how it's being said, or in this case where they're being irritating. I think it's to imply that you are a child, because children talk like that. Children use all this like cutesy, extra suffix language. Everything's got an E on the end of it or an O on the end of it, like kiddo, doggo, all this cutesified language. When it's used in this way, it's very clearly to imply that your audience or your person you're talking to is a child, and that's what I think they're doing. That's why it's so annoying. Carry on.
100% valid, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. However,
okay, I should just rewind. But she said your insecurities are valid.
Let anyone tell you otherwise.
However, anyone tell
your insecurities are 100% valid, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Okay, so I really want to know, does she truly think this woman has insecurities and that's why she posted this? Or does she know that that's not what's really happening? Because it's obvious to me that what's happening with that video she stitched is not about that woman having insecurities about being too thin. And again, I want to show you why I think that. Just look at her. Look at the angle. Look at what she's wearing.
However,
and look at the angle. That is not how you present yourself on the internet if you are insecure and think you're too thin. She's doing everything she can to look as thin as possible. She's got more of her body showing than strictly necessary. She could, and that's how you know if someone's insecure that they're too thin. They will not do that. So that's a flex move. She's flexing the fact that she's thin, or it might just be to demonstrate, because she wants people to understand the context of why she's hearing this comment, allegedly hearing this comment. So I do find it interesting. Is the purpose here to misunderstand this and say that she's insecure because it makes you feel better to think that like healthy weight people are insecure about their bodies? Or do you really believe that a woman who looks like that, who looks perfectly healthy and toned and kind of, the kind of human, natural, instinctive ideal of how most humans want like to look at, like to see in the mirror, like to be themselves, do you want to believe or truly believe that most people who look like that think they're too thin? Because they really don't. People who think they're too thin, it's usually because they are actually too thin, especially women. With men, in a lot of countries that have an obesity crisis, and with America, you also got a double thing. You've got gym culture where a lot of people are really jacked and they're big, but in a big, overly heavy and muscular because of going to the gym, using various body hacks and things to make what they gain to be disproportionately muscle, or you're fat. And so in a lot of I've seen studies showing that a lot of men and boys in the United States who are healthy weight think they're too thin, and it's because everyone around them is either fat or super muscular and big. So, but no one's just like normal anymore. Like a normal what men used to look like for like most of our history as humans isn't really common anymore. And so if you look like that, you now see yourself as too thin. But that's in men. It's really not common in women to feel that way. as far as I've seen in any studies. Like some women absolutely do, but not most. And you can see from her video that is not how you present yourself if you think you're too thin. You'd be embarrassed about it and you would cover up and you wouldn't do that, the thing that makes you look like you've got a huge bubble head and but like a tiny body, like with the trick of the angle. So, no, why is she saying this woman is insecure? It seems to me she's only posted that video to make a point, or possibly just to get views because it would get views. But if you want to assume that she cares that much about the content that she's made, I would assume that it's motivated by, the sense of injustice that, you know, other people feel that they can tell her to eat more, even though she's healthy weight, and yet if she does that, it's people are less understanding of that. Well, you should skip a meal, because you're, and it is relevant here the fact that she's healthy weight, because if you're underweight and someone tells you that, it is more like telling an overweight person to skip a meal or whatever, right? To eat less generally, just to have less calories in whatever way. Whether maybe that is, it depends on the person. Maybe skipping a meal would get that person, and doing nothing else, just skipping a meal every day, might get that person right into the calorie deficit they need to be, or it might be too much. It depends on how many of that person's daily calories come from that one meal that they skip. If that meal is an extra meal that you don't need, or that meal is, overall giving you too many calories, skipping a meal might be one of the many different ways that you could put yourself in a reasonable calorie deficit and lose the weight in a healthy way. It really depends on the person. So it's not inherently negative to tell someone to skip it. Like I only have one meal. I eat everything in a 4-hour window. So I skip two of a typical sort of Western culture meal. I skip breakfast and lunch and just have, or I kind of put them all in a 4-hour window. Okay. And that's not being unhealthy. I'm at the most healthy I've ever been. So yeah, let's see what
Hey,
he
bestie.
has to say.
Your insecurities are 100% valid, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. However, what you're saying is not okay for anybody to say. First of all, insulting somebody's body in the face of somebody insulting your body is never going to fix the problem. It's never going to help you or the other person. It's just going to make more people hate their body.
I disagree. I don't think you can make someone else hate their body unless they already do. You could. I just don't see how that makes any sense. Because I've also heard so often people in fat acceptance kind of obviously deep down know this too, because they will say it doesn't matter how much you skinny shame a thin person, they are never hurt by it because they know the beauty standard is the way they will often phrase it. But that kind of reveals that what you're saying is false. Then it's not coming from other people, because if other people are constantly telling thin people that they are wrong, and yet thin people still like being thin, isn't that evidence against your claim that all of our body image just comes from society, and that we're kind of born blank slates with no brain of our own, which I always find very insulting as a human, but a lot of people seem to want to believe that humans are just born blank slates with no personality, no inherent preferences. I just don't see that makes any sense. The only time I'm ever self-conscious about any part of my body is if I already realize that think it's weird. Like I've got one very short stubby toe that looks out of place with all the others, and from a young age, yeah, children at the swimming pool would point and laugh at it, and that made me feel really self-conscious. But if I had felt like that toe was really cool looking, like maybe I would have hidden it just to avoid any shunning or things like that at that age. But it wouldn't have made me feel like it was ugly. It would have made me feel like, hey, for some reason, other people don't like my beautiful toe. I think my toe is beautiful. Others don't like it. I just don't see how, if there's something about me that I like, I can't be made to like. I get, I've been criticized by family and people on the internet for how I've dressed sometimes, and sometimes I look back later and I agree. I think, wow, that wasn't a good look that day, but hey, at the time I liked it, and that's what matters, right? It made me feel good that day. And I look back like maybe 6 months later even, and already somehow my taste has changed, or I just see it in a new light, and I'm like, well, yeah, that wasn't a good look, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Yeah, I can't be made to find something about myself unattractive unless I already did, and I'm not going to be made to find something attractive that I didn't. That just doesn't make sense, and that point is conceded every time they downplay like underweight shaming. They will never say underweight. They always say skinny shaming and thin shaming because they want it to be vague, in my opinion. Like, they don't want you to think about the medical terms at all. But I would say if you're being shamed for being underweight, um it really it's the same as being overweight. If you really like how it looks, you will take it as a compliment. We know people have said this, that they were underweight and they took it as a compliment because they wanted to be underweight, right? And it's the same. I feel like fat acceptance will admit this on some level. They will kind of say, yeah, it's not as bad because they really like it. The truth is, not everyone does like it. A lot of people actually don't like looking underweight. In fact, most people don't like to look under. No, it's not about the feedback you get. We're just born liking to look, most of us, in a healthy weight range, and a few of us are outliers who like looking bigger or smaller than a healthy range.
Second of all, posting it on the internet makes more people insecure about it than just the person you're trying to insult. Third, and most pointedly, while your insecurities are 100% valid and nobody should be making fun of your body for any reason, that...
Okay, so I think this is revealing some of the underlying psychology when she said that you shouldn't post this online because it's going to make other people feel insecure. That proves that they believe in this movement that you can sort of change how people feel about their bodies. And so when they are not bothered that someone is being told to eat more and therefore gain weight, right? They are that shows that they're not bothered about everyone gaining weight. Of healthy weight people, perfectly healthy weight people gaining weight is like perfectly fine by them. They're not bothered that there is a trend of people. The majority of people in an overweight country are overweight, and America is one of those countries. If you're in a majority overweight country, then you can be pressured to eat like everyone else and to look like everyone else, meaning to get overweight, because that becomes seen as the norm. And you've got people with these conditions who want you to get big for their own psychological reasons, and I think that's part of what this movement is about as well. It's they want more people to get fatter. Honestly, I think that's what it is, because it reinforces their condition, and makes them feel less bad about it, and stops them wanting to lose weight as much in their minds if they can get everyone else to get bigger and bigger. I know they won't admit to that being the motive, but the behavior speaks louder than words. And this behavior is, yeah, you're basically saying that you do believe that we can influence how people at large feel by just hearing what they say. And so every time you come on, and it's so easy and free in this community to insult people who are not fat, just don't have to be any way other than whatever they consider not fat, which is like in some cases anything less than like a 2x or a 3x even. Then like it's okay to say those people are not strong, those people are trying to fit the beauty. I'm not saying she hasn't said those specific things, but she's basically playing down the whole thing of people thin shaming. Why would you not think that's a systemic issue? You think the fat shaming is a systemic issue, and it's bad that it's harming people by making them want to change their bodies, but you don't seem bothered that it's also very widespread for people to criticize people who are not fat and tell them to get fat, essentially, or tell them to gain weight. And in her case, if she gained weight, oh well, she wouldn't immediately become overweight. Like, I don't know how many pounds it would be, like, but like telling someone who doesn't need to gain weight to gain weight, telling someone who doesn't need to lose weight should be seen as the same. So the fact that they're not seen as the same kind of reveals that the intention of this movement is to shame people into getting fatter. Otherwise, why would you only care when people shame someone into losing weight, but not when they shame them into gaining weight?
Phobia is bigger than insecurity. That phobia is a real systemic issue that is bigger than you, bigger than me, and bigger than whatever you say to other people.
Oh, the obesity crisis is it's ruining people's lives. It's ruining people's careers. People are losing their jobs because they physically can't do them. Everything from a bus driver to a firefighter, soldiers. People are losing their jobs. Even things like office work. Some people get so big that they really need almost 24-hour care or 24-hour care. You've got people who are in rehabilitation centres right now, because they can't do anything for themselves, and they would lie there and dehydrate to death, essentially, if they didn't have someone to bring them water and attend to their sores that they get from not being able to move, and all of the and from the skin folds, which are causing fasciitis, which is a horrible, painful way to pass away, and it has killed people. just the fasciitis, just the skin folds alone, that is a systemic problem, in the sense that, like, it's really, I don't know what you mean by systemic, particularly people have different ideas of what that means, but certainly it's a very widespread problem that is bigger than you, bigger than me. It's bit, I mean, she's obviously not anywhere near that size. I'm not saying, like, I don't, and you can't also, you can't tell when someone's online if they're using filters, like that last woman. We don't know if she's even thin. She might be filtered, and she might just be trying to get views, even though she's not even in that situation. We don't know, ever. I'm just going by the arguments presented, and talking as if I just can assume that everyone is being completely honest, just for the sake of argument, right? And if you are promoting people to say that it's okay for everyone just to start on the road of getting fatter, when we've seen that a lot of the time people don't stop. Once you start overeating, it starts a cascade of excessive hunger because of the glucose and insulin instability it causes, and it's a vicious cycle. You start to get more and more conditions, which and some of those conditions themselves promote more and more hunger, and the kinds of food that is available now, full of trashy chemicals, invented in the last 100 years, that food ruins your gut microbiome and makes you hungrier. So the more of that you eat, the more hungry you get. It's a vicious cycle, and people are not just getting a bit overweight and then stopping. Obviously some do, but it's unfortunately, people are just, they're told, oh, it doesn't matter if you get a bit bigger, a few pounds. Oh, it doesn't matter if you're just overweight as long as you're not obese. Oh, obesity class 1's not that bad. You don't look that bad. You look like everyone else. But then people just keep going, and then by the time they realize, oh no, this is really serious, like that's all that time that's all those years honestly shaved off their life span, and quality of life, definitely quality of life in old age is shaved off. That every time, all the time you spend obese, even class 1, it's already like shaving off your years of good quality life in your retirement, if you even make it to retirement. It really is a genetic lottery how long you can last at certain weights and how severely overweight you can get before it causes problems. That's massively genetic. You've got people who pass away and they're only of obesity complications, maybe in their 50s, and they were only like 50 pounds overweight, but most of their lives. And someone else can get to literally 900 pounds and they're still alive. Not for a great length of time, but people can physically get that big. Others can't. They will pass away from it earlier. It's a genetic lottery you're playing. You don't know if you're one of the lucky ones who can get that big, or if you can, and how long you can stay a certain size before you get various complications, including very serious illnesses. So, and the illnesses I've seen people suffer from, and this is coming from, I live in a society that's affected by this too, and it's affected people I've loved and the loved ones of people I love, and it affected me when I got overweight and obese, and I was very annoyed that no one warned me what it was like. So this is a systemic issue, is the obesity, and people being encouraged that it's normal to overeat by everyone around them, encouraging them that, oh, you should eat a burger. All those comments over time, could that not be having, if you really believe people are as impressionable as you believe, don't you think this could be part of the, I don't think it is, but in theory, and according to your logic, everyone constantly, the majority, the overweight majority, telling the healthy weight minority to eat a burger all the time. If people are as impressionable and following, basically all sheep like you think they are, won't that do the same thing? Won't that cause people to eat more and all get fat? Is that just what you want? Is that what you want? Like, so that you're not alone in going towards high cholesterol and diabetes? Is that what's happening?
People. And trust me, you don't want to be the one contributing to it. Posting this kind of thing on the internet is going to cause active harm. And not just to the person you want to hurt, although you shouldn't be trying to hurt anyone. If you're given an insult like that, there are so many other ways to deal with the situation.
This is more of a general disagreement with, it's not even a fat acceptance. I don't agree with this idea of turning the other cheek and being the better person all the time. I mean, if you do, that's fine. But no, I've never bought into that. Like, I think if someone's being mean, being unnecessary in some way, like, they kind of, I don't feel bad giving them back as much as they give. It's only when you go like out of proportion, and I don't think this is not out of proportion. It's not like she turned violent or anything. It's not like she said something truly awful that would actually hurt someone. She basically gave exactly the mirror back to that person, the exact mirror back of what they said. And especially if that person was also in a healthy weight range, that would be a perfect mirror, because she's healthy weight and yet being told to eat more. It would be like her saying to a healthy weight person, you should eat less. both would be equally inappropriate. And I like this method personally. I've never been given this comment, but if I ever get this kind of comment from anyone of any weight, I would probably respond with something like this, just to point it out, and then maybe get a discussion going. It depends on the context, obviously. Is it a stranger yelling in the street? Is it someone I'm friendly with? Is it just banter? Obviously, all that we don't know the context of this.
You can walk away, you can avoid it, you can respond calmly and maturely and ask someone not to talk about your body. You can give a formal and logical response like the one I'm giving you now. And my fourth reason and final reason is that eating a burger is a normal thing to do. Skipping a meal is not something that should be condoned. Well,
no, I completely disagree. It depends on the context. Skipping it, as I said, like it's been found that for most or many people who are already healthy, at least, it's different if you have diabetes, totally different. Certainly diabetes type 1. But intermittent fasting, eating within a smaller window every day, is beneficial to at least some of the population. I'm never going to say for blanket for everyone, and it's certainly diabetics. You shouldn't be fasting without consulting your doctor, sure, and other conditions. Obviously, if you're underweight, all of these things are different. But I mean, if you're already starting a healthy weight, having maintenance calories overall, but in a smaller portion of the day, so that most of the day your body isn't busy digesting food, and all those other like healing and repair processes kick in, it's actually good for your longevity. It is good for you. It's good for most people. It doesn't mean everyone should or needs to do it, but it's just false that it's automatically bad. Whereas eating a burger, no, it does depend on the burger. It depends. Did you make this burger in a traditional way, like pre-1900s, with all traditional culinary ingredients? Then it's fine, as long as you don't have more calories than you need overall. Like, so you could have a really high calorie burger if that's all you eat that day, then it might actually still work out fine, But if you're eating a really high calorie burger on top of what you'd normally eat to maintain your healthy weight, then you're going to gain a bit of weight. And if you keep doing that, you're going to gain more and more weight. Maybe slowly, maybe quickly. It depends on the how severe the surplus is and how quickly you're building up that surplus. So, but it's not inherently unhealthy unless it's a trash, which it usually is at this point. Unless it's a trash pre-made burger full of microplastics and chemicals invented in the 1900s, which we did not co-evolve a microbiome to deal with. Our microbiome is exposed to everything we ingest, everything we put into our gut gets it is affecting all those millions and millions and millions of microbiota, the little bacteria. And the idea that we just like this cocktail, these burgers, especially in the US, but even in my country, it's really bad in the US. You've got over 10,000 chemicals can be allowed in any combination. They've not been tested for long-term effects. How could they ever? And certainly not in combination, but not even separately, but not in combination with each other. And so you've got this cocktail effect of all these chemicals ruining your gut microbiome. No, I don't think it's never, it's not healthy under any circumstances to eat that kind of trashy burger. If you make it yourself, it can be healthy. And even so, though, like, I'm not saying that if you ever eat a trashy burger, you're gonna like drop dead immediately or anything. It's not that. It's just that it objectively, you don't need to eat trashy burgers. You don't need to eat any burger, but you don't. What I'm saying is, it is never healthy to eat a trashy chemical-filled burger. That doesn't mean I'm saying that I'm an authority, I'm going to tell you not to do it, or you're morally wrong if you do it. It's objectively not true that is unhealthy to not have a burger ever. And when you said like skip a meal is inherently unhealthy, it's not. Whereas most people are eating these days trashy chemical-filled burgers, not real bread that's only got like 3 ingredients in it. Real bread buns have like 3 or 4 ingredients: salt, yeast, flour, water. Like basically, if you've got like these burgers that people buy pre-made, and you're throwing your money away as well. But hey, it's up to you. Like, it's not necessary. There is no harm. There is harm in eating a burger, actually. There is harm in eating what most people call burgers these days. They're not really burgers. They're just basically a bunch of plastic spray painted to look something vaguely edible. Certainly, if you live in the US, they are. They're not as bad here, but there's still unnecessary chemicals in them just to be cheaper than real food. Real food is more expensive to produce and distribute and preserve than these crappy chemicals that they can just pump out much more easily and keep the food preserved longer and bulk it up basically in a cheaper way than actually buying more actual food from actual farmers. So yeah, you do what you want, but it's just not true that not having a burger is like it's just not true what she's saying there. The comparison isn't fair at all. Skipping a meal is not inherently bad. Only if you are really desperately trying to gain weight for your health, then sure. If you had a strict eating plan for some specific medical reason, but most people can skip a meal and it's not going to be anywhere near as bad. In fact, I said in the last video, there was a study that showed when you're talking about one skipped meal, it's actually better for the average person who is not underweight anyway to skip a meal than to have ultra processed food. The ultra processed food is worse for your cognitive function. You do worse performance wise, cognitive performance wise in the day when you have the ultra processed meal than if you have no food at all for that meal. Um, because well, they didn't go into why, but we've got a couple of different mechanisms for that.
I'm still saying that somebody telling you to eat a burger because of your body is wrong, and it is 100% wrong. It is different than telling someone to skip a meal, which is causing active bodily harm, as well as mental harm. Eating a burger doesn't actively do those things.
I'm sorry, if skipping a single meal causes you mental harm, that is another symptom of your condition. Like, it shouldn't be that big of a deal to you, really. It really shouldn't affect you that much. Like, if food is just fuel and nourishment, it can be fun, it can be tasty, but it shouldn't be like it shouldn't affect your mental health to skip a single meal. Like, that could explain why you're overweight. Honestly, if that's how you feel about food, that you are like that obsessed with it, that like it ruins your day or whatever, and actually affects your mental. It could like maybe be an irritant if I had to skip a meal because I missed a bus, and then I was like, oh, now I can't eat whatever. It would not be an irritant. But if it really affects your physical well-being that much, that just shows that you have very poor glucose regulation. Someone with good glucose regulation, their body can adjust quite nicely to, oh, okay, I'm not having a meal yet. And then you have, if you are maintaining a healthy weight at that point in your life, then you would hopefully get those calories back in the next meal or by snacking more that day. Like, you make up the calories later, and it won't have any impact on your health, except to, as I say, a little bit of fasting is actually good for your like aging process and other things and healing and repair.
Every time for no reason. Think about what you're saying. It might be a good comeback, but it's different than what the other person is telling you.
It's exactly the same. Okay. It's exactly the same if everything else is kept the same. If we assume that you're both healthy weight and the other person's saying it's healthy weight, then they're both you shouldn't go up to someone who is healthy weight and tell them to eat less. You shouldn't tell a healthy weight person to eat more. And you shouldn't tell a stranger what to eat in general if it is a stranger, but we don't know the context. So I think I did a lot better there. I don't think I rose to the bait anywhere. So yeah, let me know what you think. What do you think about this moral dilemma? If someone is trying to thin shame you or under eating shame you, whether you're underweight or actually healthy weight, those are obviously two different situations. But what do you think? What is an appropriate response? Should we be trying to be morally superior, or should we like just give them back a taste of their own medicine and point out the hypocrisy? Let me know what you think. Thanks.